Okay, the first thing we need to do is put some powder in our flask. We never want to pour directly from the powder can into our firearm because that's a lot of powder to be pouring in there. First of all, it'd be hard to measure. And then second of all, it could ignite if there was a spark left down in the barrel from a previous shot. So we don't want to use this to be pouring powder into anything. So it's best to have your big can of powder somewhere else after you start to load and fire. So we're going to take this powder, and today we're going to be using 2F powder in our rifle because that's the size of powder that we need for this particular rifle. These are all going to be 50 caliber rifles, so 2F is what we're going to use. If you notice, I also use either acrylic or brass equipment with this powder because this powder is quite explosive, and we want to use anything that will not cause a spark, such as steel. So we're using an acrylic flask, and we've got some brass instruments as well. Both do not create a spark. All right, I've stepped away from the loading table, and so we can see if the fire channel is clear. To do that, we're going to have to put a cap on and actually fire a cap down into the chamber. And so I wanted to step away from the table so that we don't have any sparks and keep it safe. Also, I want to make sure that my muzzle's pointed in a safe direction. If I'm on a range, basically that's walking up to the shooting line. If I'm out in the field, that's just anywhere that's safe that I can point the muzzle. So I'm going to take my capper and I'm going to put a primer on the nipple of this percussion cap lock. I've got it in full cock so that I could reach the nipple, and I'm going to put it down, put the muzzle down close to the grass, and when I pull the trigger and shoot the cap, the grass should move if the fire channel is clear. All right, looks like we have a clear fire channel. Okay, now we've got a clear fire channel. We're going to start the load. The first thing we got to put in is powder. So we talked about not pouring powder straight from a can and using a flask. And we have various flasks out here to show you. And we want to use a flask that will not create a spark. This is a brass flask, and it has a spring-loaded gate on it, which will keep powder from pouring whenever we release it. All of these should be of that style. This is an acrylic flask, which we already have powder poured into, and it also has that spring-loaded gate that keeps the powder from pouring when you release it. And then if you really want to go traditional, you can use something like this old powder horn made with a real cow horn. However, it doesn't have any kind of gate on it, so you have to be a little more careful with it. But none of these flasks should be used to pour powder directly into a rifle or a firearm of any kind. We want to use a powder measure to make sure that we get the exact amount of grains into the rifle. And so this powder measure is marked off in increments of 10 grains, and for each of those, each firearm, it's a little bit different. For a 50 caliber, the minimum load is 50 grains. And so we're going to use that for practice shooting. And so we've got it set here for 50 grains, and we'll pour that much powder in it, and then that's what we pour into our firearm. So I've got the spring-loaded gate pushed down, pouring powder in. Just pour it to the top of the tube. Close the conical top on it, and that little conical shape will allow you to pour the powder into the muzzle easily. Then we'll just take and pour that powder straight in one blast. If there were a spark left over from a previous shot, that powder would ignite. However, that powder would just burn, and it might scare you a bit, but it's not going to blow up in your face. If I was pouring with this much powder or the can, then yes, we would have a problem. So that's why we want to stay completely away from pouring powder from any of the large containers and keep with our powder measure. Next, we're going to put in our patch and ball. So powder, patch, and ball, or it won't shoot at all, is kind of our little saying that we use. But the powder and the ball and the patch will go in together. The patch will serve as a seal around the ball so that there is a gas seal in the grooves, in the rifling grooves of the barrel on the inside, so that all of the efficiency of the powder burning and the gases will be used to push that ball back out the barrel when we shoot it. The ball starter is a simple little tool that allows us to get that ball started inside this barrel, which is very tight with the patch on it. And so it has a short starting position, and then it's got a longer leg that we'll use secondly. So to begin with, we'll take the patch and the ball, and we'll center the patch as best we can in the muzzle end. And you want to make sure that you've got enough patch, or the same amount of patch, on each side of the ball so that it is fitting down in there evenly. Then we'll take the short starting part of the ball starter, put that on the ball, and then just wrap it with the ball of your hand, just like that. And now you can see that that ball is just inside the barrel, just in the muzzle, flush with the top of the barrel. Then we'll take the long end and we'll just push it straight down. And so now that ball is about 6 inches down inside this barrel. The next thing we're going to do is take our ramrod and push the ball the rest of the way into the barrel. In this case, we're using a range rod. A range rod is a rod that's a little bit longer than the ramrod of the rifle, so that we can have a little bit more leverage to load multiple times over and over. Also, they always have some sort of end that protects your hand a little bit better. And there's various types, but again, you want one that is made of material that will not cause a spark. So we're going to take this range rod, and we're going to put it into the barrel, and with one smooth stroke, we're going to push this all the way down to the breech end of the barrel. So now we have our powder down there, and we have now our patch and ball firmly against the powder. And now it's a fully charged firearm at this point. This bench allows us to put the firearm at an angle away from us so that the muzzle is not pointed directly at us. We're going to be working at the muzzle and loading all of the components of a charge into the muzzle. However, we still want to maintain a very safe environment. So to do that, we want to keep this away from us as much as possible. So we always want to keep it leaned and angled away from us, and always work at arm's length as much as you can, and not ever hover your face or your body over the muzzle end. And that way we can still maintain safety. So as we load, as we put in components, and as we're working, we want to stay back away from it and keep our body parts as much as possible out away from the muzzle end. So now that we're loaded, we're going to step up to the shooting line away from our loading table, and we're going to take the shot. Before we shoot though, from here up, I've not used earplugs, but we're going to put in earplugs because a lot of noise, just like any other firearm. We're going to make sure we have ear protection. Also, we always wear eye protection, whether we're loading or if we're out shooting in any way, or hunting especially, because a lot of people don't think about wearing eye protection while they hunt. But for a muzzle loader, all of this area here will release a lot of flying debris in the air. And there could even be metal shards from the cap itself. So we always want to wear eye protection when we're out muzzleloading shooting. We're also going to demonstrate having someone else prime the firearm with the cap. I like to do that when we first start out with kids, because it is allows them to worry about the firearm in their hands and not have to handle another piece of equipment. Eventually they'll be doing their own, whether they're at a competition or out hunting in the field, but I'm going to demonstrate having someone else come up and cap the firearm. So I'm going to mount the firearm, and then I'm going to put it into full cock. It will be primed, and then I'll take the shot. After you've taken the shot, pull the hammer into half cock, take the unused cap off, and muzzle up, safely walk back to your loading station. And now we're ready for the next shot.